Don't you dare. You're not going to try to steal your sister's credit for supporting us. My mom, Catherine, yelled, her voice echoing through the living room, making my heart pound against my chest. I sat there stunned, my face burning with rage, my fingernails digging into my palms. It was Christmas Eve at my parents' house, just me, my sister Madison, who was out getting candy, our parents, and my cousin Talia. The tree was lit up, its twinkling lights reflecting off the numerous framed photos of Madison's achievements that cluttered the mantelpiece. The scent of pine and cinnamon filled the room, and yet all I could feel was the crushing weight of their judgment pressing down on me, making it hard to breathe. My name is Abigail. I'm 28 years old, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the afterthought in my own family. My sister Madison, the golden child, could walk on water as far as my parents were concerned. Her marketing career, her Instagram following, her perfect hair, everything about her was worthy of constant praise. Meanwhile, I couldn't even breathe without them finding something to criticize about my choice to become a teacher at a low-income elementary school. But this time, it wasn't just their usual dismissive words. It was about the truth, the painful truth that cut deep into my heart. Since July, I had been quietly sending my parents money every month to help with their medical bills, my father Robert's heart medication, and my mother's arthritis treatments, while skipping my own checkups and putting off paying my student loans. I did it without fanfare, without seeking recognition. But Madison had somehow taken all the credit, and my parents believed her without question, without a single moment of doubt. When I finally tried to tell them the truth, my mom shut me down like I was some pathological liar looking for attention. I didn't know what to say after that. My throat felt tight, like someone was choking me, and all the words I wanted to scream just stuck there, burning inside me. Talia, who had been sitting quietly in the corner examining the Parker family photos with her designer's eye, finally spoke up. "Wait a second," she said, her tone sharp enough to cut through the tension like a knife. "How do you even know Madison's sending the money? Have you ever seen actual proof of it? Bank statements? Receipts? Anything concrete?" My parents looked at her like she had grown a second head, their expressions a mixture of shock and indignation. My dad Robert waved his hand dismissively, the same gesture he'd used when dismissing one of my childhood accomplishments. Of course Madison wouldn't lie about something like that. He scoffed, adjusting his reading glasses. "She's been the responsible one since day one. She understands what it means to truly support family, unlike some people who chose less lucrative careers." Responsible. That word felt like a slap to my face, leaving a stinging sensation across my cheek. I spent the last 6 months tightening my already stretched budget just to help them out. Skipping dinners out with friends, canceling my gym membership, saying no to things I really wanted and needed, all because I thought it was the right thing to do. The memory of counting pennies to make sure I could send them enough for Dad's heart medication made my stomach twist. But no matter what I did, Madison always managed to swoop in and make me look like the selfish one, the disappointment, the teacher who couldn't even afford to take care of her own family. Just as I was about to respond, the front door opened with a theatrical swing, and Madison waltzed in, a bag of candy swinging from her manicured hand, her designer boots clicking against the hardwood floor. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice annoyingly cheerful, as if she hadn't just walked into the middle of an emotional hurricane. Her perfectly styled hair bounced as she tilted her head in feigned innocence. She took one look at my mom's flushed face and my clenched fists and immediately put on her innocent act, tilting her head like she had no idea what was happening, though the calculating look in her eyes told a different story. "You need to explain to your sister," my mom said, pointing a shaky finger at me, her arthritis swollen knuckles prominent. "She's trying to claim she's been helping us financially with the medical bills when we all know it's been you and your healthcare fund." Madison froze for a moment, her eyes darting to me, then to Talia, before putting on her most saccharine smile, the same one she used in her Instagram post tagged #FamilyFirst. "Oh, Mom," she said with a practiced laugh, setting the candy on the counter. "I'm sure Abby just misunderstood. You know how she gets confused about money matters." She turned to me, her expression dripping with fake concern, her eyes cold as ice. "You know I've been handling the medical expenses for months now, little sis." I didn't want to burden you with it, especially with your teacher's salary. I know how much you struggle. I stared at her, absolutely floored by her audacity, feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach. The prescription bag I'd brought with me, Dad's heart medication that I'd picked up on the way here, sat unopened on the coffee table. Misunderstood? I said, my voice trembling with rage and hurt. I've been sending them money for your medical bills since July, every single month, and you knew that. I've been skipping my own doctor's appointments to make sure Dad gets his heart medication. Madison, don't you dare act like this was all a mix-up when you've been posting about your fake healthcare fund on Instagram. Talia crossed her arms, glaring at Madison, her designer's eyes seeing through the carefully constructed facade. Yeah, Madison, care to explain why you've been so quiet about it all this time? Or why you've been posting about your so-called healthcare fund on social media when you know it doesn't exist? Talia challenged, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. Madison's fake smile faltered for just a second, a crack in her perfect facade. But she recovered quickly, brushing her perfectly highlighted hair behind her ear like nothing had happened, though I noticed her hand trembling slightly. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice dripping with condescension, the same tone she used when speaking to interns at her marketing firm. I've been helping out because, unlike you, Abigail, I actually care about Mom and Dad's well-being. Some of us make career choices that allow us to support family properly. That was it. I felt something snap inside me, like a dam breaking after years of pressure. My vision blurred with tears of rage and hurt. Are you serious right now? I shot back, standing up so fast my chair scraped loudly against the floor, the sound making everyone flinch. You've been letting them believe a lie for months, Madison. You knew I was the one sending them money for Dad's heart medicine and Mom's arthritis treatments, but you just sat there and let them think it was you. You even created a fake healthcare fund hashtag on Instagram. Why? So you could play the hero while I struggle to make ends meet on my teacher's salary? Talia stepped in before things got even more heated, her practical nature taking over. She placed a calming hand on my arm, though I could feel her own anger simmering beneath the surface. Hold on, she said, raising her other hand like a referee at a boxing match. There's an easy way to settle this. Did Madison ever actually show you proof that she was sending the money? Bank statements? Screenshots? Actual receipts for the medications sitting right there? She pointed to the pharmacy bag I'd brought. Anything concrete at all? My parents exchanged awkward glances, the first flicker of doubt crossing their faces. My mom fidgeted with her wedding ring, avoiding eye contact, while Dad shifted uncomfortably in his seat, wincing slightly as he pressed a hand to his chest. Well, no. My mom stammered, her voice suddenly uncertain. But we didn't think we needed to ask for proof. Madison said she was doing it, and she's always been reliable. The hesitation in her voice was palpable, hanging in the air between us. Madison whipped around to face Talia, her carefully maintained smile now replaced with a venomous glare, the kind I'd seen her direct at competitors but never at family. You're out of place here, Talia, she snapped, her voice sharp and defensive, all pretense of sweetness gone. This is a family matter, and frankly, you don't know the first thing about what's been going on. You with your little design business can't possibly understand the financial complexities of supporting parents with chronic health conditions. Talia didn't back down, her stance firm and confident. Oh, I think I know enough. She shot back, her tone icy enough to freeze the room. I've watched you bask in the praise for something you didn't even do, Madison. I've seen Abigail skip her own doctor's appointments to make sure your parents get their medications. You've been feeding them lies and posting fake support stories on Instagram, and you know it. Madison let out a sarcastic laugh, shaking her head, her diamond earrings catching the Christmas lights. You're unbelievable, she muttered, pulling out her latest model phone from her designer purse, her fingers flying across the screen. Fine. If you want proof, here. She scrolled through her files with practiced efficiency, then held the screen up to my parents, carefully angling it away from me. See? These are the receipts for the transfers I've been making every month for your medical expenses, like clockwork. I've been putting money aside from every paycheck to help you both. My mom's face softened as she glanced at the PDFs, relief washing over her features, but I knew better. I felt my heart hammering against my ribcage so hard it hurt. I stepped closer, my teacher's instinct for spotting dishonesty on high alert. "Let me see those," I said, snatching the phone from her manicured hand before she could protest, feeling the smooth, expensive case against my fingers. The receipts looked convincing at first glance. Her name, the amounts matching exactly what I'd been sending, even transaction IDs that appeared legitimate. But something about them felt off, just like when my students handed in plagiarized work. I turned to Talia, who leaned over to look with me, her designer's eye for detail scanning the documents. "This is a lie," I exploded, my voice shaking the walls, rattling the ornaments on the Christmas tree. The room went dead silent, but I couldn't stop the torrent of words pouring out. "You faked these, Madison. The dates don't align with Dad's prescription refills. Don't act like you've been sending them money when you haven't sent a single dime. I'm the one who's been living on ramen noodles so Dad can get his heart medication." My chest heaved as I glared at her, daring her to deny it, feeling years of suppressed anger bubbling to the surface. I wasn't going to let her get away with this, not this time, not when my parents' health was at stake. Talia, who had been so sharp just moments ago, suddenly stepped back, looking uncomfortable as the family tension reached a boiling point. "I don't know. Maybe I went too far," she muttered, avoiding Madison's victorious glare. She wasn't going to take sides anymore, not with the tension this high, retreating to her role as the outside observer. Madison just smirked, holding her phone close to her chest like it was some kind of shield, her expression one of practiced innocence that had fooled so many people for so long. "Fine," I snapped, pulling out my own much older, much more worn phone. "You want proof? I'll show you my bank statements right now. You'll see every transfer I've made for the medical bills." My hands shook as I opened my banking app, sweat making my fingers slip on the screen, only for it to display an error message. The screen froze, displaying, "We're experiencing a major technical issue. All services are temporarily unavailable." "No," I muttered under my breath, my stomach dropping, tapping furiously on the screen. It wasn't working. I closed it, reopened it, and tried again, my heart racing. Nothing but the same error message. "No, no, no. Come on," I hissed, panic rising in my chest like a tidal wave. "It's not working. The banking system is down." "How convenient," Madison said smugly, her arms crossed over her expensive sweater, victory written all over her face. "The one time you need to prove something, your phone just doesn't work." "Sounds legit, Abigail. Maybe next time stick to teaching spelling rather than making up stories." "Enough," my dad roared, standing up and towering over me, his face flushed with anger, one hand pressing against his chest. "You've embarrassed yourself enough already. If you can't back up your story, you owe your sister an apology right now." His tone was cold, final, like a judge delivering a verdict. "And if you don't, you can pack your things and leave. I'm not letting you ruin Christmas with your jealousy. This stress isn't good for my heart." I froze, feeling the weight of everyone's eyes on me, a familiar feeling of being judged and found wanting that had followed me since childhood. The prescription bag I'd brought sat untouched on the table, invisible to everyone but me. "Apologize? For what?" I spat, my voice cracking with emotion. "For telling the truth? For being tired of living in her shadow? For sacrificing my own needs to make sure Dad gets his medicine while she posts fake charity work on Instagram?" My dad just pointed to the door, wincing slightly as he did, using his health as the final emotional weapon. "You have 5 minutes to decide. A good teacher should know when to admit she's wrong." I didn't wait. I grabbed my coat and the prescription bag they hadn't even bothered to open, and walked out into the freezing night, slamming the door behind me. Tears blurred my vision as I made my way to my car, the cold air stinging my wet cheeks. I had never felt so small, so lost, so utterly alone. Christmas was supposed to be about family, about love and connection, but all I could feel was how little I belonged in mine, how my sacrifices meant nothing compared to Madison's carefully crafted lies. I drove aimlessly through the dark, my tears blurring the Christmas lights strung along the streets into meaningless smears of color. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, and my chest felt hollow with betrayal. My mind was racing, replaying the confrontation over and over like a cruel movie I couldn't shut off. How could Madison do this? How could my parents, especially my father with his academic background, believe her without a second thought or a shred of evidence? I glanced at the prescription bag sitting on the passenger seat. The heart medication I'd picked up for my dad on the way to their house, using money from my already stretched teacher's salary. The receipt showed I'd paid $187.50, money that should have gone toward my overdue student loan payment. My eyes stung with fresh tears of frustration and hurt. I didn't even realize where I was going until I pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour coffee shop, its neon sign casting a harsh blue glow against the night sky. Inside, a few lonely souls hunched over laptops and coffee cups. The bright fluorescent lights felt oddly jarring against the stillness of the night, exposing my tear-streaked face and bloodshot eyes for anyone to see. I grabbed my phone and Dad's medication, then slid into a booth in the far corner, still trembling with anger and humiliation that seemed to radiate from my skin. My banking app stared back at me, as useless as my attempts to defend myself had been. Every time I tried to log in, I got the same frustrating message displayed in cheerful blue font. We're experiencing a major technical issue. All services, including ATMs, are temporarily unavailable. We're working to resolve this as soon as possible. Thank you for your patience. Patience? I needed proof now. I felt like screaming at my phone. I refreshed the app again and again, jabbing at the screen with increasing desperation, as if sheer willpower and raw determination could force it to work, but it was no use. The universe had it out for me tonight, piling one cruel coincidence on top of another, making me look like a liar in front of the people who should know me best. A barista with tired eyes brought over a steaming cup of coffee I didn't remember ordering. "You look like you needed this," she said with a kind smile before drifting back to the counter. The unexpected kindness from a stranger made my throat tighten again. An hour passed in miserable silence. I was still staring at my phone, empty coffee cups scattered around me like casualties of my failed attempts, when a message notification finally popped up. It was Talia. "Hey, are you okay? I've been thinking about everything, and if you need a place to crash, my door is open. I designed the guest room myself, so it's actually comfortable. I'm not sure what to believe right now about all this, but you've always been honest with me, even when it was hard." And those receipts Madison showed. Something felt off about them. "Let me know where you are. Nobody should be alone on Christmas Eve." For the first time that night, I let out a shaky breath that felt like I'd been holding it for years. Talia believed me, or at least part of her did. She was torn, and I couldn't blame her. Madison's so-called proof had been convincingly crafted. She always excelled at marketing and presentation, after all, and with my banking app down, I had nothing but my word and a bag of prescription medicine to fight back with. Still, Talia's message gave me a small glimmer of hope, warming my chest slightly. At least someone wasn't completely against me, wasn't looking at me with those doubtful, condemning eyes. My parents lived in a university town, the kind where academic reputations and appearances meant everything. Dad's former colleagues still treated him like royalty, never knowing how my teacher's salary was keeping their former department chair's heart beating. I'd only come back for the holidays, hoping for a quiet Christmas with family, maybe even some recognition for the sacrifices I'd been making. Instead, I found myself driving through empty streets to Talia's house, clutching the steering wheel as if it could somehow hold me together when I felt like I was fracturing into 1,000 pieces. When I pulled into her driveway, Talia was already at the door of her tastefully renovated craftsman home, wrapped in a handmade blanket and holding 2 mugs of tea, steam rising into the cold night air. Her warm amber porch light cast a gentle glow that felt like a stark contrast to the harsh fluorescence of the coffee shop. "Come in," she said softly, her expression a complex mix of worry and hesitation, her designer's eye taking in my disheveled appearance without judgment. I stepped inside, immediately enveloped by the warm, soothing atmosphere Talia had created in her home. Soft textures, calming colors, everything the opposite of the rigid, achievement-plastered walls of my parents' house. She didn't press me to talk right away, respecting the rawness of my emotions. She just handed me a mug of chamomile tea and led me to the couch with its soft, enveloping cushions, where I finally released the breath I'd been holding since I walked out of my parents' house, feeling the tightness in my chest loosen just slightly. "I'm not lying, Talia," I said after a few minutes of silence, clutching the warm mug like a lifeline. My voice cracked with emotion, but I forced myself to keep going, needing desperately for someone to believe me. "I swear to you, I've been sending them money for Dad's heart medication and Mom's arthritis treatments every month since July. I've been skipping meals, working extra tutoring hours on weekends." Madison knew, and she let them think it was her. Worse, she encouraged it. "Those receipts she showed, they're fake." "I know they are. Look, I even have Dad's heart medication right here." I gestured to the pharmacy bag I'd placed on her coffee table. Talia nodded slowly, her eyes moving between my face and the medication, still maintaining a careful neutrality that spoke of her inner conflict. "I believe you," she said hesitantly, touching my arm gently. "But you have to admit, it doesn't look great right now, especially with the app conveniently not working and Madison's perfectly crafted evidence. It's like the perfect storm designed to make you look like the jealous little sister." I've studied family dynamics enough to recognize when someone's being set up as the family scapegoat. "I know," I whispered, my frustration boiling over and spilling into my voice. "But tomorrow, if the bank system is back up, I'll show them the proof. I'm not stepping foot in that house for Christmas Day unless I can prove Madison's been lying." I refuse to sit there and be treated like I'm making this up while she basks in praise for my sacrifices. Talia sat back, tucking her legs beneath her, looking thoughtful as she sipped her tea. "Everyone's going to be there tomorrow," she said quietly, her voice taking on a strategic tone. "Your parents, Madison, all the aunts and uncles who've watched this dynamic play out for years. If you walk in with irrefutable proof, there's no way she can weasel her way out of it. Her perfect image would crack right in front of everyone." "Exactly," I said firmly, feeling a surge of determination cutting through my despair. "I'm not going to let her keep making me the bad guy. Not anymore. Not when I'm the one who's been sacrificing everything to make sure Dad gets his medication while she posts fake charity work on Instagram." Talia gave me a small, encouraging smile, her designer's eyes sparkling with something like respect. "Well, you can stay here as long as you need to. I've got fresh towels in the guest bathroom, and that pull-out couch is more comfortable than it looks. And tomorrow, let's hope the bank system is back up so you can finally show everyone who's really been the responsible daughter all along." The next morning, I woke up feeling a sliver of hope stirring in my chest, thinking maybe, just maybe, the universe had decided to cut me some slack after the emotional hurricane of last night. The soft morning light filtered through Talia's guest room curtains, creating a momentary sense of peace. But as I reached for my phone and opened the bank app with trembling fingers, my stomach dropped like a stone. The same infuriating message stared back at me. "We're still experiencing a major technical issue. Services remain unavailable. Thank you for your patience." I groaned, running a hand through my messy hair, feeling the weight of disappointment crushing my brief moment of optimism. "Still down," I muttered, tossing the phone onto the bedside table with such force it skidded across the surface. For a moment, I just sat there, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing frantically for alternatives, my heart hammering against my ribs. How was I supposed to prove anything without access to my account? How could I face my family, face Madison with her perfectly crafted lies and my parents' unwavering faith in her? Talia knocked softly on the door before peeking in, her hair pulled back in a casual bun. "Morning," she said, holding 2 mugs of coffee that filled the room with a rich, comforting aroma. Her face fell immediately when she saw mine, reading the disappointment written there. "Still no luck with the banking app?" I shook my head, taking the mug from her, wrapping my fingers around its warmth. "Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I don't know what to do, Talia. I can't just walk in there with my word against Madison's. They've never believed me over her, not once in our entire lives. Even with Dad's medication that I brought, they'll just say she gave me the money for it or something." She sat down beside me, tucking her legs under her on the neatly made bed. "There's got to be another way," she said, Thinking out loud, her designer's mind clearly searching for creative solutions. Can you call your bank? Maybe they can verify the transfers over the phone? Or what about the pharmacy receipts for your dad's medication? I considered it for a moment, but knew it wouldn't work. The familiar weight of futility settled on my shoulders. Even if I called the bank, my parents aren't going to let me sit there on the phone in front of everyone on Christmas Day. They'd just dismiss it as another desperate excuse. Dad would start clutching his chest again, using his health to shut down the conversation. Besides, it's Christmas Day, and all the bank branches are closed. And the pharmacy receipts only show I bought the medicine, not that I've been supporting them financially for months. I tried calling the bank's customer service line anyway, my fingers nervously tapping against the phone case as it rang. But all I got was an automated message in an infuriatingly cheerful voice. We are experiencing high call volumes due to a widespread technical issue. Please try again later. From all of us at First National, Merry Christmas. I hung up, frustration boiling over like a pot left too long on the stove. Merry Christmas, indeed. I muttered bitterly. Everyone must have been calling for the same reason, their holiday plans disrupted by the banking outage, and now I was completely stuck, cornered like an animal. I have to think of another way, I said, more to myself than to Talia, my teacher's determination kicking in. I can't just show up empty-handed. I refuse to stand there and be humiliated again while Madison smirks and my parents look at me with disappointment. I've spent my entire life seeing that look. Sitting at Talia's beautifully arranged kitchen table, staring blankly at my coffee cup, I felt completely stuck, trapped in a maze with no exit. Every option seemed like a dead end, every path blocked by Madison's carefully constructed web of lies. There has to be a way, I mumbled, more to myself than to Talia, who was scrolling on her phone nearby, her brow furrowed in concentration. Something Madison didn't think of when she faked those receipts. Some detail she overlooked. She's always been careless about the small things. I picked up my phone for the 100th time, my fingers moving automatically, scrolling aimlessly through apps and emails, hoping desperately for inspiration, for any tiny thread I could grasp. The prescription bag sat on the counter, a tangible piece of evidence, but not enough to prove the months of support. That's when it hit me like a bolt of lightning, the emails. My heart skipped a beat as the realization dawned. Every time I made a transfer to my parents, I got an automatic confirmation email from the bank. Those wouldn't be tied to the app or the bank's current technical issues. They would exist independently in my email account, untouched by the banking system's failure. I nearly dropped my phone as I scrambled to search my inbox, my fingers flying across the screen with renewed energy. Please be there. Please be there. I whispered, a desperate prayer to the digital gods. It didn't take long. There they were, clear as day, like a row of perfectly aligned evidence. Monthly email confirmations from July through December, showing the exact amounts I transferred for Dad's heart medication and Mom's arthritis treatments, and the same account numbers linked to my parents. Each one time-stamped, each one indisputable. Thalia, I practically shouted, jumping up from my chair and spinning my phone around for her to see, my heart pounding with vindication. Look at this. The emails. They're all here. Every single transfer I made. It's all the proof I need. Look at the dates. They perfectly match Dad's prescription schedule. Relief and determination flooded through me at the same time, a powerful cocktail of emotions that made me feel lightheaded. Talia's eyes widened as she read over the emails, her face breaking into a bright, genuine smile. You've got her now, she said, her voice steady with confidence, squeezing my shoulder supportively. There's no way Madison can talk her way out of this. These emails are irrefutable evidence. The account numbers, the dates, everything matches perfectly. I nodded, my resolve firm as steel, standing taller than I had in months. I'm going to that house, but only with this proof in hand. If she tries to deny it, I'll show them these emails right in front of everyone. I'll show them how I've been supporting them while struggling to pay my own student loans. I'll show them the prescription receipts that match exactly with these transfer dates. For the first time in hours, I felt like I had control again, like I was the teacher managing the classroom rather than the unfavored child seeking approval. Madison's carefully constructed house of lies was about to unravel, and this time, I wouldn't let her gaslight me or manipulate my parents with fake tears and clutched pearls. As I stared at the confirmation emails, a wave of relief washed over me, but it was quickly followed by a twinge of embarrassment that flushed my cheeks. How had I not thought of this earlier? It was so obvious, sitting right there in my inbox all along while I panicked and spiraled. But then again, I hadn't been thinking clearly since last night. I'd been too overwhelmed by the fight, the accusations, the sight of my father using his heart condition as emotional leverage, and the sheer humiliation of being called a liar in front of everyone. My mind had been spinning in 100 directions, and honestly, I was just trying to hold myself together without breaking down completely. God, I muttered, shaking my head at myself, running my fingers through my uncombed hair. I feel so stupid for not checking my email sooner. It's been sitting there this whole time, just waiting for me to remember it exists. Talia reached over and squeezed my arm, her touch reassuring. Don't beat yourself up, she said gently, her eyes kind. You've been through emotional warfare in the past 24 hours. It's no wonder you didn't think of it right away. When we're under stress, our problem-solving abilities take a hit. I learned that in my psychology books. The important thing is that you found it now, and just in time. Her reassurance helped ease some of the shame, though I still felt a little silly for the oversight. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was coming next, straightening my shoulders like I did before walking into a challenging classroom. Okay, I said, sitting up straighter, feeling a renewed sense of purpose flowing through me. I've got the proof. I'm going over there, and I'm setting the record straight. If they still don't believe me after this, then that's on them. I can't control their reaction, but I can stand in my truth. Talia nodded, her expression firm with solidarity. I've got your back, Abigail. Let's go show them the truth. And no matter what happens, remember, you're the one who's actually been there for them when it mattered. I pulled into my parents' driveway, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, taking a moment to steady my racing heart before stepping out into the crisp Christmas morning air. The sight of the house decorated with twinkling lights, a cheerful wreath on the burgundy door, and the perfectly placed holiday decorations that my mother prided herself on, felt like a cruel joke, a festive mask covering the dysfunction within. I wasn't here to celebrate. I was here to expose the truth that had been buried under years of favoritism and lies. Talia gave me a small nod of encouragement before we both walked up to the door, the email confirmations safely loaded on my phone, Dad's prescription bag clutched in my hand like evidence in a trial. My mother, Catherine, opened the door, her face tight with disapproval, her arthritic fingers gripping the door frame. So, you decided to come back, she said, her tone sharp enough to make me flinch, cutting through the cheerful Christmas music playing inside. Behind her, Madison was leaning casually against the wall in a festive red sweater that probably cost more than my weekly salary, smirking with the confidence of someone who believed they'd already won. Did you come to apologize, Abigail? She asked, her voice dripping with mockery, loud enough for the relatives already gathered in the living room to hear. My dad Robert stood further back, arms crossed over his chest, looking like he'd rather slam the door in my face than welcome his younger daughter home for Christmas. I noticed he was wearing the watch I'd bought him last year, though he'd probably forgotten who gave it to him. I just want to celebrate Christmas with the family, I said softly, forcing my voice to sound apologetic, swallowing my pride for the moment. I don't want any more drama. I brought more of Dad's heart medication. I held up the pharmacy bag, which went completely ignored. My mom narrowed her eyes but stepped aside reluctantly to let me in, her suspicious gaze following my every move. Madison let out a little snort as I passed her, the scent of her expensive perfume overwhelming, whispering just loud enough for me to hear. Took you long enough to come crawling back. Guess teachers can't afford hotels. I clenched my fist around my phone but kept my face neutral, feeling the weight of the evidence in my pocket. Let her think I'd given up. Let them all think I was just here to grovel and move on. The satisfaction would be all the sweeter when the truth came out. I played along, smiling faintly and staying out of the way as the house slowly filled with relatives. Cousins, aunts, uncles, my father's former colleagues. They all greeted me with varying degrees of warmth, none of them aware of the storm brewing beneath the surface of our family's carefully maintained facade. I noticed a few new photos of Madison had been added to the mantle since last night, while my small teaching award remained hidden on a bookshelf in the corner. As we sat down for Christmas dinner, I felt my heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it, the anticipation building with every moment. The table was perfectly set with my mother's best china, a stark contrast to the emotional mess we were all sitting in. I knew Madison couldn't resist bringing up last night, couldn't pass up the opportunity to cement her role as the victim. It was only a matter of time before she used the moment to paint herself as the martyr and me as the jealous, ungrateful sister. All I had to do was wait and make sure my proof was ready when she made her move. It didn't take long for Madison to seize the spotlight. As we all sat around the table, passing dishes of roasted turkey and cranberry sauce, exchanging polite conversation about the weather and holiday plans, she cleared her throat dramatically, setting down her fork with a delicate clink against fine china. "Well," she began, glancing at me with a barely concealed smirk, smoothing her perfectly styled hair. "I think we all need to address the elephant in the room before we continue with our lovely family Christmas." The table went silent, all eyes turning toward her as if on cue. She leaned back in her chair, feigning a look of concern, her expression practiced to perfection. I could almost see the Instagram filter she would have used for this moment. "You know, last night was really tough for me," she said, her voice trembling just enough to seem genuine, one hand placed delicately over her heart. "I mean, I never thought Abigail could stoop so low as to accuse me of lying about helping our parents with their medical bills. It was honestly heartbreaking to have my own sister call me a liar on Christmas Eve." My stomach twisted painfully as whispers spread around the table like wildfire. A few relatives were already glancing at me with open disapproval, while others seemed too stunned to react, their forks frozen halfway to their mouths. Uncle Jim shook his head slightly, avoiding my gaze. Madison wasn't done with her performance. She was in full marketing mode now, selling her narrative with the skill that had earned her that corner office. "I've always tried to be there for this family," she continued, laying it on thick, her eyes glistening with perfectly timed tears. "Sending money every month to help with Dad's heart condition and Mom's arthritis treatments, never asking for recognition or praise. I set up that healthcare fund specifically to make things easier for them. And for Abigail to turn around and call me a liar in front of everyone. It's beyond hurtful. Especially on Christmas." Her performance was flawless, tears threatening to spill, but never quite falling to ruin her makeup, voice shaking just enough to sound sincere without becoming unintelligible. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed her myself. My parents nodded along like obedient puppets, my mom looking particularly wounded as she patted Madison's hand. "You didn't deserve that, Madison," she said, her voice firm with maternal protectiveness. "We've always known you were the responsible one, the one we could count on." The room filled with murmurs of agreement and sympathetic glances toward Madison, and I felt the weight of their collective judgment pressing down on me like a physical force. My cousins and aunts stared at me like I was the worst person in the world. The ungrateful teacher who couldn't accept her sister's generosity, the family disappointment who had to create drama even on Christmas Day. I gripped my phone under the table so tightly my fingers ached, my pulse pounding in my ears like a war drum. The email evidence was ready, but the weight of years of being disbelieved and dismissed pressed against my chest. I had waited for this moment, mentally rehearsed it a dozen times since my discovery this morning, but now that it was here, with all those eyes on Madison, the pressure was suffocating. I took a deep breath, steadying my trembling hands under the table as Madison continued her Oscar-worthy performance. When she finally paused, delicately dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed napkin, careful not to smudge her mascara, I seized the moment. "That's enough," I said, my voice cutting through the murmurs of sympathy, calmer and more controlled than I felt inside. Every head turned to me in unison, some with surprise, others with outright disdain, forks clattering against plates. I stood, gripping my phone like it was a lifeline, feeling the familiar sensation of being the lone dissenting voice in my family's courtroom. "You've had your chance to talk, Madison. Now it's my turn to speak," I said, channeling the authority I used in my classroom when breaking up arguments between students. She scoffed dramatically, rolling her eyes toward the ceiling. "Oh, here we go again. The teacher needs to lecture us all on Christmas Day," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. I ignored her barb and addressed the table instead, making eye contact with each relative. "I've been sending Mom and Dad money every month since July, specifically for Dad's heart medication and Mom's arthritis treatments. I don't post about it on Instagram, I don't make speeches about my generosity, and I don't ask for recognition." But when Madison stood there last night claiming she was the one doing it, showing fake receipts and talking about her non-existent healthcare fund, I couldn't stay quiet. And now I can prove it. I held up my phone, the screen displaying the first of the email confirmations I'd found, my hand remarkably steady. "These are my receipts. They come directly from my bank. They show every transfer I made to Mom and Dad's account for their medical expenses, along with the exact dates and amounts. I have all of them, from July through December." Madison leaned back in her chair, smirking confidently, though I noticed her fingers tightening around her wine glass. "Oh, please," she said, waving me off with a manicured hand. "Anyone can fake an email these days. You really expect everyone to believe that over actual bank receipts?" My proof came straight from the banking app. "They're not fake. You're just trying to ruin Christmas with your teacher's salary insecurity." "You know what's interesting about your so-called proof, Madison?" I shot back, my frustration finally boiling over, my voice rising with emotion. "If you're so confident, let's check the dates and account numbers." "Mom, Dad, did you bother to check the transfer dates on Madison's receipts last night? Did you verify which account they came from? Because I'll bet they don't match the dates of Dad's medication refills or your actual bank statements." My parents exchanged uneasy glances across the table, the first genuine reaction I'd seen from them. Dad shifted uncomfortably in his chair, scratching his chin, a gesture I recognized from childhood when he was caught in a lie. Mom's hands fidgeted with her napkin, arthritis making her fingers stiff. "We didn't check the details," my father admitted reluctantly, his former professor's confidence wavering. "We just assumed the receipts were legitimate, and we don't use the bank app on our phones." "You just assumed she was telling the truth," I finished for him, my voice sharp with years of accumulated hurt. "You trusted her without a second thought, without any verification. But now you have a chance to see for yourselves. The truth is sitting in your own bank account." I crossed my arms, daring Madison to interrupt, feeling stronger than I had in years. "Let's go and check your ATM statements right now. They show the account numbers for every deposit made to your account. You don't need fancy banking apps for that. Just your ATM card and the truth." Madison's perfect smirk faltered for a split second, a flash of panic crossing her eyes, but she quickly recovered her composure, tossing her hair over her shoulder. "Fine," she snapped, setting down her fork with a clatter. "Let them check. I have nothing to hide." "But this is absolutely ridiculous, making a scene on Christmas Day." My parents hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with the tension radiating through their carefully planned holiday dinner. The other relatives shifted awkwardly in their seats, some staring at their plates, others watching the drama unfold with undisguised interest. "It's Christmas," my mom said weakly, her voice small and uncertain. "Do we really have to do this now? Can't we just enjoy our meal?" "Yes," I interrupted, my voice unwavering, filled with a teacher's certainty. "We do. Because I've spent every Christmas of my adult life being compared to Madison, being told I'm less responsible, less successful, less worthy of your approval. I deserve the truth to be known today now." Reluctantly, my dad grabbed his coat from the hallway closet, and the three of us left the stunned dinner party behind. The cold December air bit at my skin as we drove to the nearest ATM in tense silence, the car filled with the weight of potential revelation. At the ATM, my dad pulled out his card with slightly shaking hands and accessed the transaction history, the machine's screen glowing in the early evening darkness. Slowly, he scrolled through the dates, matching them to the statements on my phone. The moment of truth came when he clicked into the details of a July deposit, the first one I'd made. It displayed the bank account number, and it matched mine exactly. He checked August, September, October, Every single one lined up perfectly with the emails I'd shown them, the dates corresponding exactly with Dad's prescription schedule. My mom stared at the screen, her face draining of color, her arthritic hand covering her mouth. "It's Abigail's account," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the ATM. "Every one of these transfers came from Abigail's account." Madison actually took the time to fake her statements, just in case we would ask one day. She's been lying to us all this time while Abigail's been supporting us. When we pulled back into the driveway, the atmosphere in the car was thick with tension. My parents hadn't said a word the entire ride home, their faces a complex mix of shame, disbelief, and the dawning realization of their years of misplaced trust. As we walked into the house, the murmurs of conversation in the living room came to an abrupt halt, like someone had pressed mute on a television. All eyes turned toward us, the weight of the situation pressing down on everyone in the room. The Christmas tree lights blinked silently in the corner, casting alternating shadows across tense faces. And then we saw Madison. She was by the door, furiously throwing on her designer coat and clutching her expensive purse, clearly having read our expressions the moment we walked in. Her face was flushed with anger and embarrassment, her confident smirk replaced by a panicked, guilty expression, her perfect composure finally cracking under the weight of exposed truth. "Madison," my dad said firmly, stepping forward, one hand unconsciously moving to his heart. "We checked the statements. Every single transfer since July came from Abigail's account. The account numbers match perfectly. You've been lying to us about the healthcare fund, about everything." The room erupted into hushed gasps and uncomfortable murmurs. A few relatives exchanged awkward glances, clearly embarrassed to have believed Madison's performance just minutes earlier. Aunt Susan dropped her fork with a clatter. Uncle Jim stared intently at his plate. One by one, they started gathering their things, mumbling hurried goodbyes about family matters, and giving you space as they shuffled toward the door, Christmas dinner abandoned. Madison's carefully constructed facade finally cracked completely. She let out a bitter laugh that morphed into a sob, tears streaming down her face, smearing the mascara she'd applied so carefully that morning. "Fine," she snapped, spinning around to face us, her designer boots squeaking against the hardwood floor. "Yes, I lied, okay. Is that what you want to hear? I lied. Are you happy now, Abigail? You finally get to be the hero." She glared at me, her voice trembling with a mixture of frustration and humiliation, her carefully curated image crumbling before everyone's eyes. "You told me back in July that you didn't want a big deal made about sending them money for their medical bills, that you just wanted to help quietly. So I thought, what's the harm in letting them think it was me? They already see me as the successful one anyway. It seemed like a win-win. They got the money, I got the credit, and you got to stay under the radar like you always want." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut, knocking the wind from my lungs. The twisted justification only made the betrayal sting more. "I told you because I trusted you," I said, my voice shaking with emotion. I was proud of being able to help them, even on my teacher's salary. I thought maybe, for once, you'd support me instead of competing with me. Instead, you used it to make yourself look good on Instagram and in front of the family while I was left feeling invisible and unappreciated. Do you even realize how humiliating this has been for me? How many extra tutoring jobs I've taken to afford those medications? Madison's expression softened for a brief moment, a flicker of genuine remorse crossing her face, but she quickly turned defensive again, retreating behind the wall she'd built. "They were never going to believe you over me, Abigail," she said bitterly, gesturing toward our parents. "That's just how this family works. I just took advantage of an existing dynamic. I didn't create it. I didn't think it would blow up like this. It wasn't supposed to become this whole Christmas drama." My mom stepped forward, her arthritic hands trembling, her voice unsteady. "Why, Madison? Why would you do this? We would have been grateful to either of you for helping with our medical expenses. There was no reason for this deception. No reason to take credit for your sister's sacrifices." Madison didn't respond. Her eyes darted around the room like a cornered animal. She grabbed her keys from the entryway table and stormed out the door, the designer heels that had cost a month of my salary clicking rapidly down the walkway before the door slammed behind her. The room was silent for a long moment, the Christmas tree lights blinking in the corner, the weight of Madison's actions sinking in. The partially eaten holiday dinner sat abandoned on the table. My parents turned to me, their faces filled with regret and shame that seemed to age them 10 years in minutes. "Abigail," my dad began, his voice heavy with emotion, his professor's eloquence failing him. "We owe you an apology. A huge one. We should have listened to you, asked questions, verified things, but we didn't, and we're deeply sorry." My mom nodded, tears streaming down her face, her hand reaching for mine across the table. "We've treated you unfairly for so long, always assuming Madison was the responsible one. And this betrayal of trust was inexcusable, on our part as much as hers. I don't know if we can ever make it up to you, but we'll try. I promise. Those medications you've been paying for. I had no idea you were struggling to support us." I stood there, taking in their words, a storm of conflicting emotions washing over me. Part of me wanted to forgive them immediately, to finally have the recognition I'd craved for so long. But another part still ached from years of being overlooked, years of Madison this and Madison that while my achievements went unnoticed. "I appreciate the apology," I said finally, my voice quiet but steady. "But this doesn't erase everything. It's going to take time to rebuild trust. I've spent my whole life feeling like I was never quite good enough, and that doesn't go away with one revelation." They nodded solemnly, my father wiping a tear from behind his glasses, and for the first time in my adult life, I felt like they truly saw me, not as Madison's less successful sister, but as Abigail, the daughter who had been silently supporting them all along. The night ended quietly after that, with the house emptied of guests and the three of us sitting in the lingering aftermath of truth. Dad took his evening heart medication, the pills I had purchased, with a new awareness of where they had really come from all these months. Mom asked about my classroom, my students, with genuine interest rather than polite obligation. We didn't mention Madison. It wasn't the Christmas I had hoped for when I drove to their house the previous day, but at least, for once, the truth was out in the open. The family photos on the mantel suddenly seemed unbalanced, too heavily weighted toward one daughter. My father promised to hang my teaching award in a more prominent place. As I helped clean up the remains of our interrupted dinner, I noticed my phone lighting up with a text from Talia. "How did it go? Are you okay?" I smiled, feeling a weight lifting from my shoulders. It would take time to heal the deep wounds of years of favoritism, but for the first time, I wasn't the bad guy anymore. I was just Abigail, the daughter who had been there all along, finally seen.